Hello. In our previous episode, we did a temporary assembly and planned where to place the ESCs. I removed the tapes and replaced them with zip ties. I also applied the same process to the bottom part. Then I screwed these two profiles you see here into the holes. Since these are simple tasks, we didn't feel the need to record them. Now we've come to one of the most important aspects to pay attention to when assembling a drone: motor installation. So, what is motor installation and how is it done? First of all, the motor must always be perfectly parallel to the ground when placed on the drone. For example, after completing the installation on an arm, I don't want the motor to be positioned like this, or even at a slight angle like this. I always want the motor to be perpendicular and parallel. So when you drop a plumb line to the ground, you want a right angle to form from the motor down. All right. So what do we need to do? We need to make this assembly precisely. At the same time, you can make your preferences based on the propeller's inch size, whether close or far. We will choose the optimal level for ourselves. All right, let's move on to today's part of our video. First, we will attach the motor to the arm as shown. Then we will calibrate these motors and ESCs with each other. For that, we have our power control station and receiver here. All right, let's get started. First, we'll mount the motor arm. Now, our motor arm is here, our motor is here, our clips are here, and our screw connectors are here. Okay, so let's set this aside for now and also set these aside. First, we need to fit the motor into the motor mount. Normally, our part was like this, but we widened it with a Dremel. There are 4 holes under our motor for making the screw connections. And the motor company you purchase from, for example ours, is T-Motor, provides you with the connection elements along with the motor. We take the part we machined on the CNC, we align it exactly with the slot here. After aligning it and making sure all the holes are in line, we place our screws in their positions. These steps need to be done gently. The final shape is like this, but of course we don't leave it like this. We need to secure it to this arm. So how do we secure it to this arm? The cables will pass through the arm. Keep that in mind. Therefore, first I'm placing all the cables inside this arm. Very nice. I see that they have come out from the other side. I carefully pull the cables from the other side. Here I make sure these parts fit into their slots. Yes, I have the cables in my hand. They fit perfectly. From this point on, you bend this part exactly 90 degrees, and then we will use these 4 holes here to mount it with these connectors. And we will use these nuts. Very good. So let's start our assembly. First, I place this piece into the slot below, and I place this piece here as well. After positioning them, I need to insert the screws. Then I place their counterparts in front of them, like this. And finally, I cover the top. Here we need to be as precise as possible. I assemble them all as they deserve. In life, if you give people more value than they deserve, they will be ungrateful. If you give them less, you will be unjust. Therefore, it is essential to always be balanced in measure and judgment, and we are giving our drone the attention it deserves in a balanced manner. We have completed the assembly of our motor arm. Now we will mount the motor arms onto the body. The equipment we use to mount the motor arms onto the body is identical to the equipment we use to screw the motor onto the arm. That is, we have a half-moon piece and another half-moon piece to complete it. And to assemble these, we use metric 2.5 screws, as you can see. To make these connections, we need to place the top plate as well. So the task is to complete the connections between the ESCs and the motors and determine which direction each motor will rotate. Once the plate is attached, I won't have access to the ESCs again. Therefore, I need to determine the directions now. To determine the directions, you can clearly set them by changing the positions of the connectors you see here at the ESC inputs. So let's start with this motor first. I want to position the front of my drone facing you, the valued viewers. That is, towards the camera. So the longer part here will be the front direction of the drone, and the shorter part will be the back. All right, let's get started. To determine the direction of the drone, the rotation direction of the motors is important for me. According to the ArduPilot configuration, I will set it up so that the left propeller at the front of the drone rotates clockwise and the right propeller rotates counterclockwise. All right, let's begin. First, I'll randomly mount my motor. During this assembly, I won't pay attention to any specific order. But after checking, if it turns clockwise, which is not the direction I want, I'll change the position of these pins. For now, I've kept the cable I mounted in this position. To test it, I will need to power the motor, so let's give it some power. I'm connecting my battery. After connecting the battery, I turn on my remote. I will provide 4.5 volts to my receiver from this power source. After giving 4.5 volts to my receiver, I notice that my remote and receiver are paired. Then I will connect the relevant ESC to the throttle channel, which is channel 3. I make sure the throttle stick is all the way down and connect my ESC to channel 3. After completing the connection, I will gradually increase the throttle. Yes, as you can see, my motor is currently rotating counterclockwise, so it's spinning in the direction I want. Now I can configure it this way. First, I disconnect the power from the drone, then I disconnect the ESC signal feed. And yes, that's it for this motor. Now I will do the same for the other motors one by one. Now for control purposes, I'm checking my other motors again. This one was turning clockwise. The value here is correct. Now I'm doing a full check from the beginning. Yes, we have determined the directions of our motors. Now it's time to assemble these arms. Let's start in order. Let's first assemble this arm here. For the assembly, I align the arm to the desired point. I've aligned the arm exactly to this point. Now I'll first do a preliminary assembly. What does preliminary assembly mean? A mock assembly means temporarily placing the screws without fully securing it here. So, before I finish all my tasks here, I should first do a mock assembly to proceed with the other tasks more effectively. Therefore, I'm trying to calmly perform the assembly here without sufficient tension. I have determined the positions. From the bottom, I will place my screws. Now I will attach the other half moon from the top. Great. Now it can hold the motor arm in this position. Now for the other part, I need to make the connections in the same way. For that, I need to align this part. Yes, after completing the arm assemblies, we use a spirit level to ensure that the arms are exactly perpendicular and parallel to the ground at a 90-degree angle. It's very important to perform this step, ensuring that the spirit level is perfectly balanced and that the arm is at a 90-degree angle to the ground is crucial for the flight of our drone. We have completed the arm assemblies of our unmanned aerial vehicle. We ensured that the arms are perfectly perpendicular to the ground at a 90-degree angle. This concludes this section. In the next section, we will continue with the ESC calibrations and other electronic assemblies of our unmanned aerial vehicle. Thank you for watching.